I used to think sleep paralysis stories were exaggerated, something people made up after watching too many horror movies, until it started happening to me. At first, it was rare. Maybe once every few months, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, completely conscious, but unable to move. I could see my room, every detail, the ceiling fan spinning, the faint glow of the streetlight through the curtains, but my body refused to obey. I'd try to lift a finger, twitch an arm, even blink harder. Nothing, just that crushing stillness, like being pinned under something invisible. But what I didn't know back then was that the paralysis wasn't the real horror. It was what came after. The first time I saw it, I didn't even believe my own eyes. I remember lying there, my chest locked tight, breaths shallow, heart pounding so loud it echoed in my skull. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught movements, slow, deliberate, almost testing. A dark outline by the closet door. I told myself it was just the shadows or my half-awake brain playing tricks. But then it stepped closer. The outline deepened into shape. A figure, tall and impossibly thin. Its limbs slightly bent, head tilted as if studying me. I couldn't see its face, just the glint of two hollow eyes that reflected what little light there was. I wanted to scream, to do anything, but all I could manage was a faint gasp stuck in my throat. The room felt heavier, like the air itself thickened with something ancient and wrong. Every instinct screamed that it wasn't a dream. I could hear the clock ticking. I could feel the cold sweat trickling down my temples. This was real lore, at least real enough to feel like dying. The figure lingered near my bed, silent, watching. Then it leaned closer until its shadow covered me completely. I remember thinking I was having a heart attack, but then it whispered, no words, just a sound, like a deep breath drawn too close to my ear. It lasted for maybe 10 seconds, but those 10 seconds rewired how I saw sleep forever. When I finally managed to move, my body jerked violently, and the figure vanished in an instant, dissolving into the darkness. I sat up, gasping for air, drenched in sweat. Every logical part of my mind tried to explain it. REM, atonia, hypnagogic hallucination, the science of sleep paralysis. But logic didn't change the fact that I saw it. Logic didn't explain why the air still felt charged, why the shadows in the corner seemed thicker than before, or why I couldn't bring myself to turn off the light for the rest of the night. That's how it began, one night, one encounter. But it didn't stop there. It came back. And each time it got closer. After that first night, I tried to convince myself it was a one-time thing. Everyone has nightmares. Everyone's brain glitches sometimes, but denial only works until it doesn't. 3 nights later, it happened again. Same frozen panic. I woke up, staring at the ceiling fan. Its slow spin reflected in my pupils like a metronome for dread. My body locked instantly. I knew the feeling now, the dead weight pressing me into the mattress. Only this time, I didn't have the luxury of confusion. I knew what was coming, and that anticipation is its own kind of torture. I could feel it before I saw it. The temperature dropped, my breath turned thin, and a static hum filled the silence like invisible electricity crawling along the walls. When the figure appeared, it was standing closer at the edge of my bed, head tilted the same way, curious, patient. The air around it bent slightly, the way heat distorts a road in summer. Except this was cold. My eyes watered, trying to focus. But it was like looking at something that shouldn't exist in this dimension, part solid, part shadow. The worst part wasn't its presence. It was the realization that it remembered me. It leaned forward just enough for me to make out the faint impression of a face, no features, just depth where there shouldn't be. I wanted to scream again, but my throat betrayed me. The only sound that came out was a wet, strangled inhale. It responded with that same drawn-out breath, inches from my ear, and I could feel the vibration of it inside my skull. I woke up minutes later, body finally breaking free, heart thrashing so hard it hurt. I stayed up until sunrise, pacing the room, lights blazing. Rational thought tried to take control. Google searches, Reddit threads, YouTube explainers about sleep paralysis. Everyone said the same thing. It's harmless. It's your brain stuck between REM and consciousness. Easy to say when the thing doesn't stand over your bed, whispering in a voice that sounds like static and breath combined. I told myself it was stress, poor sleep, diet, anything but what it felt like. Yet, when morning came, I found something that shouldn't have been there. A faint black smear on the wall near my bed. I rubbed it. It didn't come off. By the 4th night, I stopped sleeping normally. I started setting alarms every 90 minutes, trying to interrupt my REM cycles. Coffee during the day, energy drinks at night, nothing to keep me conscious. But sleep deprivation doesn't protect you. It breaks you down until the barrier between dream and waking collapses. I began to hear faint whispers, even when awakened, distinct, like radio static from another room. At first, I thought it was tinnitus. Then one night, while fully awake, I saw movement in the mirror. Just a flicker, a shift of shadow behind me, where there was no one. I turned, nothing. Turned back, and the mirror caught a blur of black receding into the doorway. I laughed it off, out loud, as if mocking it would make it unreal. But deep down, I knew the truth. I hadn't seen a reflection. I'd seen a preview. The first few nights, after that terrifying paralysis, I convinced myself it was exhaustion. Maybe I'd been working too long, sleeping too little. For a while, everything seemed fine. My body felt lighter. The air didn't hum with that same pressure, and I started believing it had all been a stress-induced dream. I laughed about it with friends over coffee, pretending I was above my own fear. But every time I lay down to sleep, a quiet thought sat in the back of my mind. What if it wasn't over? I didn't say it out loud, because saying it made it real. It began again in ways small enough to ignore. The ceiling light flickered not, a full blackout, just a pulse, like a slow heartbeat. My phone would buzz, and when I checked, there were no notifications. I told myself Karachi's power grid was trash, that signals dropped all the time. Still, I started noticing the flicker only happened in my room. Once, I turned off the fan to stop a weird humming sound. But the vibration continued, faint and rhythmic, like breathing that didn't belong to me. 2 nights later, I caught it. The mirror in front of my bed reflected the faint glow of my phone. But when I moved my hand, the reflection hesitated, split-second delay, just long enough to make my stomach drop. I blinked hard, wiped the glass, looked again, perfectly normal. My mind scrambled for explanations. Bad lighting, maybe a tired eye. But when I stepped closer, there were fingerprints on the surface that didn't match mine longer. Thinner, pressed from the inside. The next night, my phone screen lit up by itself. No messages, no calls, just the record app open. I hadn't touched it. A 2-minute audio file sat there, time-stamped 3:14 a.m. My heart hammered as I pressed play. Static, a low hum, then my own voice whispering, "Don't look." The words twisted my spine cold. I deleted it instantly and shut the phone off. But even with the screen dark, I could feel something watching through it. I turned the phone face down, but that didn't stop the sense that the room had eyes. In the morning, I found smudges on the inside of my window hand shapes, fogged over as if someone had leaned in from outside during the night. I lived on the 6th floor. The cleaner hadn't come in days. The rational part of me kicked in again. Condensation, bad memory, coincidence. I repeated that word like a prayer coincidence. Still, I started keeping the curtains closed, even during the day, because the sunlight felt thinner somehow, as if something stood between me and it. I tried to anchor myself with normal things. Went to work, scrolled through news, listened to music in traffic. But the city's noise started sounding strange. Horns stretched too long, voices blurred together. Once, During lunch, my reflection in a cafe window smiled before I did. That was the moment logic finally cracked. I told myself science didn't fail me. I failed it. Because science could explain sleep paralysis, maybe even hallucinations, but it couldn't explain why my name appeared scrawled on the fogged mirror again that evening, even though I had cleaned it days before. It stopped being about sleep. I'd nod off for seconds on a bus and wake to find everyone staring blankly ahead, unblinking until I blinked and then they were normal again. I stopped trusting my own senses. Sleep came in short, jagged bursts. Dreams felt too close to waking. Sometimes I'd feel the bed dip slightly beside me, the weight of something sitting there. I'd freeze, unable to open my eyes, terrified of confirming what I already felt. The paralysis was gone, but the dread stayed awake. By now, my nights had a routine of their own. I'd turn off every light, leave the hallway bulb on, and check each lock twice. I'd even started recording myself while I slept, proof that nothing was happening. I thought if I could just see nothing, I'd believe it. The first 2 recordings showed nothing but my own restless shifting. On the third, the video glitched halfway through. When I scrubbed the footage frame by frame, the glitch wasn't random. It was shaped like a person sitting at the edge of the bed, shoulders slightly hunched, staring at me. I don't remember deleting the video. I just remember sitting in the dark afterward, phone still in my hand, screen glowing faintly against my face. Outside, someone knocked on the door 3 times, soft, polite. I didn't move. The knocking stopped, and I told myself I'd imagined it. Then the voice came through the door, low and quiet, the same tone I'd heard in the recording. Don't look. The next morning, the door was still locked, chain intact, bolts untouched. But the floor outside was wet, as if someone had stood there for hours in the rain that never came. I haven't slept since. The light in my room keeps flickering even when the power's steady, and every now and then I catch my reflection smiling before I do. The following nights were worse than anything I could have imagined. Every attempt at sleep became a trial, each blink a gamble. The air in my room thickened as soon as I lay down, heavy and charged like static before a storm. The figure no longer waited in shadows or flickering lights. It was everywhere at once. I could feel its presence in the closet, in the bathroom mirror, even beneath the bed. I started leaving small cameras around the room, hoping to catch evidence of what my mind refused to accept. Every single recording showed movement, not blurred shapes, not glitches. Movement like a person pacing, leaning, watching. Sometimes it stopped just at the edge of the lens, head cocked, as if acknowledging the camera. One night, I woke in a familiar paralysis, but the air felt colder, denser, almost wet. The shadow wasn't at the edge of the bed, this time was sitting. Its knees drawn to its chest, head bent forward. I could see the faint outline of its face in the dim light. Hollow eyes, nothing else, yet full of a malevolent intent that made my skin crawl. I tried to scream, to thrash, to move in any way, but my body refused, and then it shifted. Its form stretched unnaturally, elongated, leaning over me, filling the room. And I felt the pressure of it pressing into my chest, crushing my ribs. I gasped in panic when finally I broke free, rolling off the bed, shivering, drenched in sweat. By morning, my room was different. The window near the bed had handprints that weren't mine long, thin fingers pressed into the glass, wet to the touch. The wall beside the bed bore scratches, shallow but deliberate, in a vertical pattern that looked almost like claw marks. My notebook had pages flipped over on their own, the words I'd written blurred and smudged. I started photographing everything, labeling each anomaly with a time stamp. The evidence accumulated faster than I could process it. Marks that appeared overnight, objects shifted slightly out of place, the faint smell of ozone lingering in corners. Nothing in my life made sense anymore, and I no longer trusted the boundaries between night and day. I would glance at mirrors and see movement behind my reflection, a second image of myself, pale and twisted, matching my gestures with a slight delay. Sometimes the reflection wouldn't mimic me at all. I'd blink and it would lean forward, watching me with hollow eyes before receding into normalcy. When I looked directly, my phone started acting strangely as well. I received messages that weren't sent, photos taken on their own, and audio recordings of someone breathing not me while I slept. Each instance felt deliberate, like it was testing me, teaching me what fear felt like in the waking world. One night, desperate for answers, I tried to confront it. I sat upright in bed, lights on, cameras rolling, and called out, "What do you want from me?" Silence. Then, the temperature in the room dropped abruptly, my breath forming mist in the air. A shadow stretched from the corner of the room across the floor, thin and jagged, extending toward me, shifting with impossible angles. I could hear a wet, slow rasp of movement across the floorboards. It paused just short of the bed, and I could feel its gaze burrowing into me. I tried to move, to run, but my legs refused. The room seemed to tilt, walls bending slightly, and I realized with a cold certainty that I was not dreaming anymore. The attacks escalated beyond vision and sound. My body bore evidence. I woke one morning with shallow scratches along my forearm, faint bruises along my shoulders, like someone had traced my skin while I slept. My walls were marked with smudges shaped like hands and feet, as if it had climbed over furniture while I watched in paralyzed terror. I documented everything obsessively. Friends suggested therapy, sleep studies, police, anything rational. I tried. Every expert dismissed it hallucinations, sleep disorder, paranoia, but I had proof, video, photographs, marks that could not be explained by sleep paralysis alone. Yet no one would believe it. The breaking point came during what should have been a peaceful afternoon. I fell asleep on the couch for a few minutes, exhausted, and woke to find the room darker than it should have been. The shadow figure was in the corner, taller than ever, limbs bent at impossible angles, its head tilting in ways no human neck could allow. It slowly approached, leaving footprints in the carpet that glimmered faintly as though wet. I reached for my phone to call for help, but it flew out of my hands, landing in the middle of the room. Screen cracked, displaying a live feed of me sleeping from the future. It was impossible. I backed into the wall, feeling the press of air against my face, cold and heavy, and realized there was nowhere to go. It wasn't going to leave. Over the following nights, the encounters intensified. It would appear at the edge of hallways while I went to the kitchen, vanish when I blinked, then reappear in my peripheral vision. Objects shifted violently when I wasn't looking, books sliding off shelves, doors opening and closing with no wind. I began sleeping in the living room under surveillance cameras, but the figure found ways to reach me. I watched footage showing it crouching on the ceiling, pressing its form against the walls, bending light and shadows unnaturally, staring directly into the lens. My home, my sanctuary, had become a theater of constant observation, and I was the unwilling audience. Eventually, I realized it wasn't bound to the night. I caught it on camera in daylight, a faint shadow moving across the floor as I prepared tea. When I looked up, nothing was there, but my body sensed it anyway, that same crushing pressure, the subtle smell of ozone, the faint scrape of claws on tile. It had transcended sleep. It had transcended the logic I relied upon. And then, one final night, I awoke to find it sitting directly on the edge of my bed, taller than the ceiling, bending the space itself, silent and patient, staring into me. I didn't move. I couldn't. I didn't even breathe. And for the first time, I knew it wasn't going to leave. I haven't slept properly since that night. The lights in my room flicker even when the electricity is stable. My reflection sometimes moves independently. The marks, scratches, and smudges continue to appear despite my best efforts to clean and secure everything. I document it obsessively, hoping someday someone will see the evidence and believe me. But deep down, I know this is only the beginning. Whatever it is, it has crossed over into my reality completely. Every moment is a reminder. It isn't bound by dreams anymore, and it is still watching.